Thank you so much. That was too much. Actually, it was really too long. It is terrific to be here among friends, and it really is among friends. I've known Rob. Okay, yeah, you're going to go to the bathroom. Like Rob said, I've known him for close to 17 years. I think it's been quite a while. Excuse me, Bert and Tina. Having just met Sarah, to have Nate Mackey in the audience here is also really terrific. Met him a couple times, had him at the house for dinner, and Jeff Clark. So it's sort of best of all, I think, is to be able to read with Pete. I've read with him before. I don't know what you guys are going to think of it, but we have a lot of fun. So we're gonna begin. We're from Chicago. As has been mentioned, but we're people too, just like you. We tend to swear a lot and break the law, but we love our children too. So let's set our differences aside and come together over some poetry. So I'm going to start. We're going to start. Actually, Pete's going to help me out here by reading from my translation of Ajax, Sophocles' Ajax. Not one of Sophocles' better-known plays, and usually I have to go through a long spiel about what the play's about, but then I just realized we're just going to read the opening of the play, which pretty much sets things up for you. This came out, this was published by Flood Editions in 2008. So we're just going to read the opening here, and I'm going to read, the play opens with the goddess Athena, and I'm going to read Athena, and Pete is going to read Odysseus, and then a short bit of Ajax.
I'll transform into Ajax, and you'll be able to tell because I have
You'll do that
dramaturgical powers that will allow me to. You'll be able to tell.
It's stunning. Yeah. So let's start. Let's get into some poetry here. So this is Athena. Often, Odysseus, I have seen you on the hunt, pressing an enemy. Now you come to Ajax's tent at the end of the line. So the trail leads you here with fresh tracks. Then you see they go in and come out. You bloodhound, snout to the ground. Yes, the man just went in, his head sweating, his hands bloody. But no need to look inside. He is there. Tell me, why the hurry? Perhaps I can help.
The voice of Athena, my goddess. I know you. Can't see you, but that voice in my head rings like a bright bronze horn. You know me too well, yes. I've been circling this soldier's tent. The trail leads here, no further. Last night something very strange happened. It looks like Ajax is responsible. No one saw clearly, only guesses, and I want to confirm it. We just discovered a bloody mess. Our captured cattle all dead, butchered along with the herdsmen watching them. Everyone suspects Ajax of it because a picket said he saw him running with a freshly bloodied weapon, moving fast. I came right away and picked up the trail along with other tracks I don't recognize. As always, you're just in time. You can steer me from here.
Yes, Odysseus. I watched the progress of your hunt with some interest.
How have I done, my goddess?
He is the man you want.
What stupidity drove him to it?
An uncontrollable anger over Achilles' arms.
Then why kill animals and shepherds?
He thought you stained his hands.
So he planned to attack Greeks?
And would have, but for me.
How could he be so bold?
He moved under cover of night.
Then why didn't he reach us?
He was just outside your tents.
What stopped him from murdering us?
I stopped him, made him hallucinate, diverted his eyes from his desire. I turned him on the herd and the guards posted on watch. He jumped in, striking at horns, severing spines in circles around him. He thought he killed the Atriids and was attacking some other generals. I made him sick with rage, drew him tighter in the net. And soon the work exhausted him. He tied up everything still alive and led them to his tent, thinking oxen and rams were men. He has them trussed for torture. Let me show you this sickness, so you can tell the Greeks. Stay calm, he cannot harm you. I will make his vision dim. he will not see your face. You there, with the prisoners inside, put down those ropes a moment. Ajax, come, step outside the tent.
What are you doing, Athena? Don't.
Quiet. Stop being such a coward.
No, he's fine where he is.
Why? He is just a man.
Yes, but I can't stand him.
Isn't it sweet to mock him?
I'm happy enough with him inside.
Are you afraid of his raving?
Sure, I wouldn't be afraid otherwise.
He cannot see you, even nearby.
He still has eyes, doesn't he?
I will wrap him in darkness.
I guess gods can work tricks.
Now be silent and stand still.
Fine, but I'd rather be gone.
Ajax, I have to call twice. This is how you treat friends?
Hail, Athena! Hail, daughter of Zeus, my ally! I'm just about to crown your altar with these spoils.
Excellent news. But tell me this, was your weapon aimed at Greeks?
Yes, proudly. I won't deny it.
And did you attack the Atrians?
They won't insult Ajax ever again.
So I gather you killed them.
Dead? Let them steal weapons now.
Well then, what about Laertes' son? Did he get away from you?
Want to know about that bastard?
Yes, Odysseus, your nemesis. Tell me.
My favorite prisoner is inside, goddess. I won't kill him just yet.
Why not? What are you doing?
First, he's tied to a post.
And then, what will you do?
Then whipped bloody. Then he dies.
You go a little too far.
Whatever else pleases you, I'll do, but he gets what he deserves.
Since you seem to enjoy yourself, go. Let your mind run wild.
Back to work. Grant me this, that you fight beside me, always.
See what gods can do, Odysseus? Who was more sane than Ajax? Did anyone act with better judgment?
No. I feel sorry for him, even though he's still no friend. He's completely out of his mind, and that could easily be me. If you stare hard at life, you see we're nothing but shadows.
Take a good look and learn. Do not brag to the gods. Never be arrogant because you think yourself stronger or richer than anyone. One day can change it all. This is human life. Gods love the wise, but hate a fool. Alrighty. I'm going to read a couple more choral passages. Did you want to sit? Or are you just going to stay up here?
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
I'm going to stand like this.
Yeah. That was excellent, Charlton Heston, I got to say. Right? Truly, this was the Son of God. I'm just going to read a couple choral passages. Make sure I've got the right ones here. First one is somewhat dejected, and then the second one is kind of an ecstatic ode, and then we're back to dejected towards the end. So this is just the chorus in all of these. Home is somewhere else. The good island beats its head above water, far with a long time absence, suffering on the plain of Troy. The months flow by, uncounted and worn, with false hopes that escape to the place the pit forgets. Ajax gets in line behind the other problems that room with madness, was quick in the way before, now his mind an empty field where friends find hurt, at his hands his best gift, not friends they fell like kings. Was old as a day is in your mother's white head, when the mind eats alone, 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 is not the nightingale's bird anguish, is her sharp-toned song of unluck. Drum the chest to keep time, thump and tear her hair out. That hidden in hell was better than the best of his race, of struggling Greeks, fed on anger, steady it was, but now wanders. Shame, father, when you learn it, the disturbed child who's grown schizophrenic, come of age in the family. So this is the more ecstatic ode. It's kind of a crazy ecstatic. That's the chorus in this, though. Prickle and shake, nervous and high, yo-ho, Pan's here, Pan. Walk on the water, climb on the ice, up over the rocks, dance like a god, Mysia style, Knossos style, let go the mind and spin. He dances, he knows, over the Icarian ocean. Comes the Lord Apollo. He is made visible, he is present, he is glad.
Ares draws dread from the eye, and now again, yo-ho, now the sharp white gleams in day's light as a fast aircraft, Ajax lifts off weightless and obeys natural selection, kills his victim by the book. Time eats it all, don't repeat the unsaid. It's such a surprise. Ajax altered in mind, he finds a path to peace. You can already tell that this is, well, it's a Greek tragedy, so it's headed for disaster. But Ajax commits suicide. He comes out of his madness and can't deal with the shame and kills himself. So the second half of the play, or the last third of the play, really sort of deals with the status of his body. But towards the end, there's a choral ode that is, it's actually, in all of Sophocles, this is his strongest anti-war statement. And as with all this, I've taken some liberties, you'll see. Where will it end, the count of the years wandering, the toll, the statistics of missiles in flight that fall back to the ground where a crater accuses? Better hurled into space or into the crowd in hell than to be a bomb maker and share your results. The Los Alamos boys knew what they'd done. They ended the party. The glass is empty, the guests have gone, and the music has just stopped. Now he lies awake in bed, alone, no one to hold him, still in his clothes, the bed soaked, his hair matted, he's got to forget. What sleeve slid back to show the nightmares where Ajax lay exposed? Demons crawled out of the dream and ate him, ate his soul, left his scattered remains on Greenland's 10,000-year-thick sheet of ice. He's slowly melting into the ocean. Home calls to him. And then I'm going to read one more thing in this tragic mode. That was published, whatever it was, pre-crash, before the Great Recession in 2008. Since then, I've been working on a translation of Aeschylus's *The Seven Against Thebes*. So again, not a very well-known play, so if you've never heard of it, it's not a big deal. I won't go into the whole thing. It's a stranger play than Ajax, but there's the center of the play. Well, I have to give you a little more background. The events of the play take place between what happens in Oedipus the King and what happens in Antigone. So those are two Sophocles plays, but Aeschylus, it's a common myth that they're all writing from. Aeschylus is writing about what happens at Thebes after Oedipus has died, essentially, Oedipus' two sons, Eteocles and Polynices, they were going to share control of Thebes, and they were going to take turns ruling the city. Eteocles was first, and then when it became Polynices' turn, he said, "No, I'm not going to step down." So Polynices is pretty sore about this. He goes off to yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, he goes off to someplace. Comes back with 6 other heroes. There are 7 gates of Thebes, and each of the 7 heroes that come against Thebes come to a particular gate. And the center of this play is a description, it's a conversation between a messenger and Eteocles, king of Thebes, in which the messenger describes the hero that's coming to a particular gate of Thebes and what's on that hero's shield. This is the only one in which the Theban hero that goes out to match, that Eteocles matches with this invader, in which he also has some kind of insignia on his shield. So this is just one of those interchanges. So obviously there are 7 of them in the play. So this is the 4th gate. And here's the messenger. At the 4th gate, near Athena's temple, another man has posted with a shout, the figure and huge frame of Hippomedon. He spins his disc, the circle of his shield, and it makes me shudder. And the artist, whoever set the device on that shield, he was no amateur. There's Typho breathing fire from his mouth, black smoke, the rippling sibling of fire, and plated snakes run round the rim, traced and embossed on the hollow-bellied disc. He shouts the war cry filled with Ares' rage for violence, a berserker glaring panic. Be careful with a man like this. Fear herself already taunts at the gates. Then Eteocles replies, Anca Athena, our neighbor near to our gates, she hates the arrogance of this man. He's like a snake among her brood. And Hyperbius, the good son of Oenops, will post there, man against man. He'll learn what luck intends for him. Neither in frame, nor energy, nor weapons is he wanting. Hermes matches them well. He's an apt enemy for this Hippomedon, given what he carries on his shield. Hippomedon may have fire-breathing Typho with him, but Hyperbius carries on his shield Zeus, steadfast with bolts of fire at hand. Who has ever known Zeus to lose? These are the gods invoked by both. Ours is the stronger, theirs the weaker. It's likely the same for these men. If Zeus can defeat Typho in battle, then by the logic of signs, Hyperbius has his savior, Zeus, on his shield. Your turn.
There's plenty more mustard where that came from. When Sarah and Rob/Bert, or Robert, invited us to come read here, and John and I were talking about it, we thought it would be more interesting if we sort of went back and forth. Not only because, well, sometimes poetry reading can be like going to church, but in a bad way. But because, we've been having a conversation about poetry for a very long time, and John is one of the first, most important readers to anything that I write, and it goes in the other direction as well. So, there's lines that John is reading that was new to me, but, some of them are more familiar than anything I've written myself, and so it just made sense for us to kind of do a little back and forth. And the thing that I'm going to start with for my first leg is it's a poem. It's part of a long poem that I spent about 3 years writing. A poem called "The Phosphorescence of Thought," which is 1,336 lines long, which is the length of Whitman's "Song of Myself" from the 1855 edition. I used that kind of as a limit, but I wanted to write a poem that engaged some elements of Whitman's notion of the self, but in a kind of 21st century reality in which the self has been sometimes excitingly and transformatively globalized, but in other ways tragically. I wanted to sort of figure out a way to address that. And in the midst of it, the poem is built around this kind of exploration of consciousness, how it evolved, how it what happens from the fact or act of us being conscious, and in the midst of it, I wanted to have this kind of sort of praise of creation, and in order to do this, I had really no idea how to proceed. And then in 2007, I was watching this film with my dad called Into Great Silence. It's a documentary by Philip Gruning that takes place in this Carthusian monastery in the French Alps. And Carthusians are they're Catholic monks who take vows of silence, and they've been living in this monastery for hundreds and hundreds of years, and Gruning received permission to film them for a very long period and amassed an incredible amount of footage. Anyways, this film is really mesmerizing, just in the way it represents the life of these monks. And in the midst of it, they don't, even though they take vows of silence, they do actually come together to pray, and when they pray, they vocalize. And they were chanting this old medieval hymn, the Benedicite, which is a kind of praise of creation. I'll give you a little bit of the Latin as it opens. Benedicite omnia opera Domino, laudate et super exaltate eum in secula, benedicite celi Domino, benedicite angeli Domini Domino. Depending on how good your Latin is, you may have a sense of, it's in the imperative. So this is a song in which the singers are exhorting the angels of God and all of creation to praise God. So here's a kind of, here's one translation of it in a sort of churchy language. O all ye works of the Lord, bless ye the Lord, praise him and magnify him forever. And with that, I got the sort of hinge that I needed to build this particular poem. But I wanted it to be not medieval, but something, even though the thing I'm going to read from looks kind of like a hymnal. I wanted it to include things that are newer. So that's this Benedicite hymn is the thing I structure this part of the poem on. There are a couple of words that I use in the poem that are coinages that have an intrinsic meaning, or they create meaning for the rest of the poem. One of them is the word lutrescent, which combines lux or light with putrescent or putrescence. So the idea is if there's a phosphorescence of thought, if there's this kind of element of thought that glows, there has to be this idea that thoughts go rotten. So so can light as well. So lutrescence shows up.
He makes up a lot of words. Actually, when I read the manuscript, I have a subscription to the online OED. I was looking up lutrescent. I said, what is this? Like, finally I had to send him an email. Dude, what is this? What is this word? Where does it come from? He made it up. Yeah. So if you don't know, he's probably made them up.
It's true. And the other word, the other made-up word in here, which you will hear, is autochthonous. And that's a word in which I take...
Nice.
Yes. Autochthonous is Greek auto with Greek chthonios, so self and earth. So autochthonous is native born, something of the earth. And I slot into the middle of it the Greek nomos, which is law. So it's the earth's self-born law, and it's a kind of portmanteau for evolution. But it's evolution as a theology. You can think about it that way. So this is the Benedicite. Make holy all you works of God with praise and exaltation, you angels of God and you heavens, you magnifiers of all the single quantum's original energy, you hydrogen and helium, you universe of frenzied particles billowing out, you primordial billion years depthless night shuddered toward transfiguration through, you praise, you magnification, you unbearable creative moment, you consuming sacrificial force. Make holy, you galactic internal dynamics, you spew of stars, you luminous intensities, you waters coursing over heaven, and you dynamos generating their power. You slow-burning yellow star, you socket of light, you sun and moon, you same-sized Argentine luminaries drifting in the skies. Human consciousness is defined by the fact that, coincidentally, the sun and the moon have the same size from our perspective on Earth. I mean, they're obviously not the same size realistically, but imagine if the moon was much smaller than the sun, or if the sun were much farther away and smaller than the moon. Our whole consciousness would change, the idea of night and day. So that's why you same-sized Argentine luminaries drifting in the skies. That's what I'm talking about there. You fungal spores into the sinuses huffed. You wicked lunar eclipse, you dais of cooling light years. Make holy this song by blessing, by building up with praises, you telescope of time, you notion of creation, you most antique ledge of energy it peers toward, you aeonic disdain, you horror Taurus, you flowing forms, you atmospheric womb, you cellular chemistries, you earthly life, you showers and dew, you souls, you tenderly dusted, glimmering mineral energy wound, you little animations of things, you prokaryotic cells, you knitters together, you fashioners of life. Make holy this song by filling your chemical bellies with food from the sun, by binding packets of bright particles sped down to the brooding earth with data of the life mass. And make holy you fires, you heat, you winters, you hot summers, you dews and dendritic frosts, you icy rime and you polar colds, and you praisers and exalters, you oxygen-saturating Earth's system, you environmental instability, you cosmic burning aspect, you fire starters, you setters ablaze of things, you oxygen-devouring eukaryotic cells, you sweet fuckers, you meiotic, gametic, procreant urge, you involuntary erections and you sexual daytime, you avid winter ice and you fluffy winter snows, you days and nights passing through them, you light, you gloomy darkness, you bottom-down sadness, sadder still, you exfulgurations and you clouds, you rapid hapless scattering of electricity. Make holy this song, you multicellular forms, you bodies, you polyps, you worms, you insects, you clams, you sponges, you spiders, you leeches, you backbones, you life forms, surging, metabolizing, expiring, you corpses, you spent energy, you unspooling tendrils of mushroom protein, you anuses extruding that vitalizing hash, you necrophagous moonlight fruits. Those are mushrooms. You eaters of your own dead and you living things, you caloric scavengers and you sex scroungers. Make holy this song, you fountains gushing up and you seas and flumes, you rivers flowing, you sad sewage foaming and you amylaceous wastes curdling, you tannic yeasty odor, and you passerines migrating through the leaves oxygenating the reek, you hydrodynamic pluvious des plaines. That's a river that's on the western sort of outskirts of Chicago, near where I live, and that's where I do a lot of bird watching, which is the origin of this poem. You lather at the Turban Falls, you guggled twitching spent alongside. Make holy this song, you mammals, you new emotional sensations, you intoxicated central nervous system, you flowers displaying and you pollinators, you songbirds in sexual colors and you flesh of fruit, and you mother and baby sensing the quality of these things and remembering it. You elephantine massive whales and whatever else in the waters moveth. You birds of the sky threading the air with flight. You innovation of flying. You lumbering beasts of the land. You cattle sweet as grass. And you handsome cougar slain in the neighborhood. And you little house cat sphinxes perplexing the sun. You peoples, you daughters and you sons. Make holy this song, you quadrupedal hand freed from the task of walking. That's a theory that human consciousness was able to evolve when we stopped having to walk on four. And when we stood upright and our hands were freed from having to walk, we were able to start using them to explore the world. That's the whole thing about the hand. You eye seeing it flex. See, that's it. You sweet liquor of light and rain falling down. You mind imagining this. You sweet interiors. By magnifying the moment, by corroding the pathways that internal vision followed, by decaying the mind toward morbid presciences imagination fecundates. Make holy this song, you trillions of neurons keeping the creature, you stellar vistas of cells, you epiphenomenal loop, you initial leap from action to reflection, from pathway to memory, you self-thought, you slot of distinction, you crashed acid and phosphorescent flare, you infancy, you chance to learn, you curious sexual forms, you phallic thumb of love, and you thruster holding me tight. Those are quotes from Whitman. You pressure in the uterine clutch, you glare of the rich palpation, you proposition of sperm, you orchid boat, and you winged serpent, you sweet sleepiness, you relaxed body, you nations of the world, you language coming in, and you priests serving God, you spirits, you souls, you depths, you justice, you holiness, you humble heart. Make this song holy, you eccentrations of life, you lutrescent syrup in the veins, you autochthonous animal forms, shifting pneumatic, imaginal shape, by numerously erupting with fire, by impulsively giving birth, by catastrophically sanctifying the metaphors, by interpenetrating the coital cluster, by singing out love's ancient evidence, by haplessly magnifying the glassy melancholic interiors, by warding us with charms, by stitching us alphabetic talismans from strands of DNA, by forming tissue from moon spores and rubber, by leading us on, by thinking, by praising and exalting the Lord forever. If you abolish the symbols, then you tear down the walls of your own house. You should unfold the core of the symbols. We are the questions. So praise. Ananias, Azarias, Misael, bless the Lord. Praise and exalt him forever. All right, tag. No clapping. going to stand behind you.
All right, that's fine. Yeah. We're gonna dial it down a bit. We'll do a little slow medley here. Yeah, I'm gonna read 5 poems here. They're the lyric things. This first one is called Darkless. It's about being a bat. This is Darkless. Sense fit to the darkless on links along paths down the cataracts of air that echoes maze. Whatever is it like being a bat's thoughts, loams in the bat's unconscious non-structs for flight, banks singing baffles at angles to the flat, place before gray falls void into a quiet. Night oxygen fades, then thickens at moth blurs. The flutter of blood drills at brain's cavities, or pressure fills with ears mile deep lake by call. Pitch wrinkles its foil wrappers, unwinds jar lids, outspells in negative figments one for one. What drums murmur a room, imagines as sound, pulse bends wave above which the eye suffocates. And then I've got it's essentially a quartet of poems here that roughly correspond to the Aristotelian earth, air, fire, and water. So it's funny, I was talking with Tina about the 5 primary elements, so now I've got to write another one in space. This first one is called UNIVAC, the Universal Automatic Computer. Everyone knows the history of the UNIVAC. This is UNIVAC. Remington ran patents of process awake. Behold, in grids of radio tubes, Bale quickens. He looks with eyes of spy planes. He assembles hydrogen arms into normal form games. He reads the cards scored with information and speaks the probable outcomes of elections. Young Bale began a paper chess machine, the residue from finite states of play. He becomes the liquefaction of those rules, learns it's more than structure symbols want. His thinking labors over knots of entailment, spans terms that signs bind like lesions. Struggling to imagine the scent of mint, he devils himself sleepless with opaque questions. What did they recognize in cloud faces as telegraphed through thought the sky distorts? These patterned shreds of spent thunderhead mime the low entropy of his little grammar. Bale listens to grasp his own encoding, slurred through exact impairments of the brain. The cunning demon fears his self-diffuse, beneath what renders dark to him aware. This is called Pentecost. I should say all 4 of these have the same form. They're all the same length. Pentecost. Churches burn in a kind of Kansas where all have the likeness of sense. Titus, attendant, utters phrases from a manual in a language he does not speak. Titus, the only ghost in his room, bears witness to the rapture at Wichita. Does the room where he sits understand that the roof above it's on fire? This room, its walls coated in encaustic, Titus follows cracks wandering down the facture. Cracks become paths through the sibilant grasses on the plains fired by imaginary rhymes. The silhouettes of bison texture the horizon. They rumble a noise in his head. Their 50 shaggy bulks form a lexicon, each of whose entries fails a name. Whom was a picture of drawn by fire that clothes the prairie in gold? What spells the land sounds of Sunday like a shout to the untrained ear. Quakes Titus wrapped in fits of ecstasy, speaking in tongues in Kansas in flames. That one was fire. Did you guys catch that? This next one is called Paramnesia, and it is about paramnesia. And all of these...
Wait, let me guess. Air? No.
Listen to the poem. I always tell you. These are going into my next book, which will be called Paramnesia if I ever finish it. So this is Paramnesia.
I thought it was Why I Am So Sweet. That was the title of your next book.
That's a good... I'll think about that. Shut up. Turn off this mic. These are serious poems, okay? My heart is in this. This is Paramnesia. God damn it. Okay, paramnesia. One tenseless moment liquefies to be lost into the stream of static's gray light. A lapse develops him the tape, but reveals the reels degaussed, emptied of ghosts. He sorts through this tissue of noise for accusative objects he could once recall, as the magnetic arrows of the tape seethe out from their mound to forage. His perfect past, a glacier's gray retreat, looped back out of phase with itself. Its low decibel hiss resonates in throbbing waves that mimic the present seen from behind. This present bends into an empty crease where the next phoneme fails to arrive. There, books helped him recover the echo and filter on a model of speech that crashed into 12,000 darts roaming the field her face turns in shadow. Her face, it blurs with gauzy silt of words that used to comprehend her. The river spools through an oxbow bend above a bird's black wings, smooth air. And then this last one is called Luck. And it's for two friends, Candace Rye and my late friend, Jeff Marlin. So this is Luck. The mendicant ants who plot the sidewalk pattern their errors with shapes of intent. These chains of creatures, T-terms long, derive the contour of a message misread. Like bare grammar mapped to finite frames, they accrue along paths of abstract mistake. Ants riddle in the dirt a cipher that rumors noiseless channels down occult warrens. The Reverend Thomas Bayes models bodily decay on these ants, black and ochre-tricked. Just as hills erupt, so we sicken. Cells will track, then feed on kin. The greens and brown of Tom's surroundings remind that joyous accident forms every place. What did this mandarin of chance hide meaning in the I Ching of insects? There explodes a storm in the atmosphere. At its edge he makes out rain. Chaos miraculous like a cloud of starlings scatters through the rivers of his nerves. Clues of order scar this little earth Bayes takes as a blemish from heaven. You're it.
So this is actually the conclusion of the phosphorescence of thought. It's not as long as the Benedicite. You find this mixture of thousands, beloved, this riot of flowers let loose, overwhelming.
Words
Thoughts cascading signals. Pattern is a form of patron. Its degenerated element, its tendency to torpor, its fresh light let in through the window casement. Through the living form the window opens out to. The world's budding centers. Thoughts carry fist, its carvest, its little falconine developments, its evolutionary companion, falcon and man, owl's onyx, airs, embouchure, fluting witness on the wind, minds witnessing moon poison, no autonomous mistress, minds enveloping horoscope of modulating contact points, correspondences of antinomies, impulsions of zodiac force, little witnessing destinies, little paleontological perceptions, fossil meanings, proprioceptive cures, autism circuits, speaking before the world, thoughts, vibrations in the vocal cords, resonating its prophetic yet voice chorusing into the dome of the mind, messianic patterning ideal of the imagination, extraordinary aspirant, renascent environment of the theosoph, relaxing in his castle, Enochic, apotheotic ideal, end that spells, nature's teleomorphous humankind, its clever end shaper, falcon hooded on his wrist. The glory of the stars is the beauty of heaven, a glittering array in the heights of the Lord. A breviary's praise, thoughts obsidian tablet, thoughts wooden table carved with polyglyphs, thoughts offering at that table, thoughts fastness of divine powers, thoughts soma, its elixirs, tapped from extensive roots, its nourishing waters boiled into syrups, thoughts glassy nectars, mind's nectarine drunkenness, mind's inherited alcohols, its attestations, its facts, its commanding designs, thoughts broken slivers of glass, its mosaic patterns, its mosaic darkness, its thickness, its dazzle, its enveloping temperate arborescence. Counter-singing wrens, mousebirds, whose sharp, incessant sloganeering announces active territory in little troglodytic trills, trrrr, thriathonic gnostic stitched through the little woodland with polygynous song. A wren in the underbrush choruses, his mind a lute, strung with 80 songs he sings, springtime, day long and night through, wrenny pugilistic tunes of beauty, his nearby rival counter-sings to, imitating, amplifying his rhapsodies to lure what females lurk in the leafy, woody green. There's actually a coda, but that's the end of the poem, which has 2 columns, so John was reading one, and I was obviously reading the other.
My turn?
Yep. That went fast.
I know.
See, it was a faster segment.
All right, I'm gonna, for my final leg here, I'm gonna tell some stories, or rather retell some stories. So I've been writing these poems, most of them based on myth or different kinds of myths, and they're all narrative, pretty much. So this first one is called Medea. It's in this chapbook, 4 Fables, that Answer Tag Home Press published from the beautiful little chapbook. So it's Medea. It's the myth of Medea who killed her children despite Jason, her lover, their father. It's Medea. Our sons drowned in the bathtub, Jason. They struggled very little, if at all. I dialed 911 for help, which came quickly in a red blare. Policemen asked what had happened to me, and I took them down the hall where our boys wore crowns of myrtle, each in clean pajamas in his bed. I tried 3 times to tell you. I don't recall all that I said about the thing we once called sleep, we filled with breathing, quiet, and dreams. Why, love, can we not contain it? Why does it rip at the seams? This one's called Displaced. It's sort of plays on the myth of Aeneas, the Trojan hero who went off to found Rome, was displaced. Curry off Oxford Circus at 5 p.m. Aeneas alone ate for distraction at loose ends of jet lag after the turbulent flight from O'Hare. All night the hull had shuddered, clearing reefs of cloud below. He was abroad for another acquisition, another trip rehearsed by rote. Tomorrow, he knew, would lose him in work's familiar tallied tedium. Tomorrow, he would board the underground for offices in Oliver's Yard. Tomorrow, as the train leaves Euston, the Sybil will shift register somewhere keen in the compact car. Boils will pock her shins, her lamentations will reek of piss. She will crowd the doors, offending forward as they slide open. Her complaint will spill out, absorbed into the thick human drift at King's Cross St. Pancras. Unseen, she will parabolize the sky. Tomorrow hides like false recollection. Keep it on the way. This one's called Nineveh, so it's based on the myth of Jonah and the whale. Nineveh. Drunk in a flat off Nevsky Prospect, telephone ignored, importunate knock at the door. Escort of 4 KGB to the street, their officer from the Black Zills backseat. Jonah Amitayevich, a cosmonaut in Leningrad? No. Launched here from the Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. A minor prophet pitched in elliptic orbit, tumbles weightless, swallowed by the Soyuz capsule. As vacuum tube filaments glow under glass, thoughts detonate down trains of coded visions. These marvels elated there freely to witness the atheist light of stars eons below, or tea, black bread, butter, and honey, whom thrown it seems the choice decays. This is called Apocrypha. It's based on the story of Judith in the Old Testament. It's an apocryphal book in the Old Testament rather. So Judith, Israelite, dowdy woman, snuck into Holofernes, the Babylonian general's tent, and cut off his head at night and sort of liberated the Israelites. So this is called Apocrypha. Holofernes' baritone resonates out at audibility's edge. Something, Nebuchadnezzar, something, and clear skies ahead. Judith unbuckles. She and her maid rise, head toward the cockpit along the aisle. This one is called, it has the ultimate pretension of a Latin title. So I can't make fun of Pete reading the Latin. I have a poem with a Latin title. It's called Hic Domus Incenditur, which means here a house is burned. And it's based on the story that's on the Bayeux Tapestry, the Bayeux Tapestry that depicts the Norman conquest of England. Everybody's fascinated by that, which is not, technically is not a tapestry, but an embroidery. Wikipedia will tell you these things. So this is Hic Domus Incenditur, and this is from my friend Natalie Stevens in Chicago, back in Chicago. Here, herald, errant under sail, stitched hawk frets his wrist, his hounds plod tabby cloth, and here the margin fables, crane and wolf, broken oath. These drag ships to sea, these bend bows in anger. Horses pitch, falter in heaps. Along the border, bodies stripped. Here King Harold is killed, arrow to eye, sulphur fletched. Here a house is burned, in buff and dull gold. And then I'm just going to read one more here. It's a little bit longer. None of these are very long. Back from Four Fables. And this is called Chaste. And this is based on a story in Herodotus, the Greek historian Herodotus, about a guy named Adrastus who accidentally kills his brother and seeks sanctuary in the court of King Croesus, the Lydian king. And then while he's there, he accidentally kills Croesus' son, Attis, on a boar hunt. So, yeah, born loser. So there's an epigram. This poem is called Chaste. And there's an epigram at the beginning of this from Herodotus, and it's with the words of Adrastus. He says, "Having known mishap, I ought not keep company with the fortunate." So this is Chaste. Attis came again to me last night, and in that light was my brother. For 15 days we chased the myth, tongues limned our path across the plain, whose dry, bright flats shook with heat. At 20 days the grooved road climbed a narrow draw, choked with thorny briar, where tattered gaps first showed the spoor, then up through terebinth into fragrant pines, and last stands of rough oak, cool acorn-pitted groves where his harem fed. There the Thracian brides released their dogs and drove them with guttural Greek obscenities. From the brush, his crush and lumber rose as he led the avid hounds, before erupting like remorse into the clearing. There I cast, felt the fabric shift again as before, watched the ash shaft flex and then lift over the hackles, followed its fall home through dappling light. From someplace I've no memory of, into my mind a blue-black porpoise leaps, suspended in nothing, out of the deep. The sun breaks across its glinting lines, and a transparent sky curves its purpose, fills and empties that endless brief flight. Even so my javelin hung in air before it dropped, chasing me to Attis. No augur sorts my future's branching days. Attis tells me I am luck's remains. And then I just want to read two, in honor of my Buddhist hosts, I have two little haiku, sort of. So for Sarah, Tina, and Bert. All these are about thinking. So, I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not even going to pretend. But you can, whatever. Right. So these are haiku. They're really short, so don't blink. All right. The thread end of sleep. Dark dirigibles flake into sharp jet numerals that empty of memory alight. silvered ceiling of blue cloud. Bare tree lines fixed the sky like syntax. Day ends gray beyond snow.
Nice job. Take us home. Yeah. So I'm going to read the last poem in my brand new book, which is this, Luminous Epinoia, or L.E., which is making its first appearance in the world this very evening. So, and there are copies of course, on the table there, which you can acquire at a steep discount. And you should. This was this incredible looking book was designed by Jeff Clark, and I can't even actually say words. It's just look at it. Look at it. It shines forth. This poem is called Spiritual Autobiography. It's in 5 parts, and the parts of the poem are taken from, the section titles are taken from a work by the medieval Kabbalist Chaim Vital, who was a disciple of Isaac Luria in Sfat, which was in Palestine at the time. It's in present-day Israel. And he... Luria is considered by many the sort of greatest of the Kabbalists, along with Moses de Leon, the sort of transcriber author of the Zohar. And Luria didn't write anything down. There's a few poems and kind of sayings attributed to him, but most of what we have comes from his followers. And Vital, he did what one did at the time after Luria died. He wrote his own autobiography. That is, Vital wrote a work called, I think it's The Story of My Life or something like that. And it was essentially about Luria. So each of the sections, the first one is Events in My Life. The next is called My Dreams. That you would always have a section in your autobiography about your dreams and your dream life. And then you'd also have, the third section is Dreams of Others. And this would be a section in which you recorded the dreams other people have had about you, because that was part of your life. And then the fourth section is What My Master Told Me About My Soul. And then the fifth section I swapped out, and mine is called Photogogikon, which is Greek for Hymn of Light. It's an Orthodox Christian hymn to light. It has an epigraph from Wallace Stevens. Look at how awesome it looks. Did I say that yet? I didn't say that. That they had left the flame-freaked sun to seek a sun of fuller fire. 1. Events in my life. The inner world of my habitual focus is incompletely holy. How will the lamp I shine within illuminate the light I don't yet know? I was 6 in 1974 when my father's best friend, another Irish Catholic, sailing with his family a July afternoon, gave his life jacket to his youngest child who was complaining. The boom swung, knocking him off balance into the current of the sea lane in Lake St. Clair, which swept him into the Detroit River, where the corpse was found washed up 3 days later. He was, by every account, a strong swimmer, devastated, into prolonged friendlessness, devastated, into a kind of life I picture him having but can't fully conjure, into a privacy, himself, an alien's memory. Plumes of light, holy, plumes of holy light, plumes and plumes of holy light. At 31, after airless, sudden residence mercilessly prolonged in the crypt of a morbid anxiety, a bomb shelter whose fluorescence was a lightless dysthymia flickered from serotonin-disrupted dendrons where I lived and studied my feelings' glassy melancholia archivally, I read a self-help book, a book intended for those in chronic pain, which I wasn't. Began daily to meditate, mornings, a habit now, more or less intact. Fumed light, drawn along the weightless Tibetan taffy of the incense I burn. In the summer of 1969, on a family vacation, not yet 2, I somehow licked and then swallowed part of a no-pest fly strip. In the emergency room, I was given syrup of Ipecac, which I kept down until back in the family Pontiac. I didn't know it at the time, but I was heaving out of myself some portion of my soul, a part intended to inhabit the non-corporeal realm. The insecticide I had ingested was already being transformed the moment I first tasted it into imaginal liquor, which is why I don't drink spirits of any sort. Sometimes I wish I weren't a shaman. Thinking back, this was surely my first magical act. Lustered summer light risen into haze, a whole lengthened afternoon of it, horizon elongated blurs, simmering temperatures suspended indefinitely, memorially. That's a little ode to Southeast Michigan summer. My dreams. This also has a little epigraph. What you dream the night of the winter solstice will come true in the coming year. Saturnalian tradition. And that's actually, I'm not sure if that's true, but it was told to me, honest to God, by a dear friend of mine named Harry Potter. So it must be. So this is my dreams. December 20th, 1992. An old air balloon catching on fire and burning to ashes. Piloting the balloon was an 8-year-old boy sealed in an aluminum milk canister. After the balloon burnt to a crisp, the canister plummeted into the backyard of his family's cottage in Ireland. I've never been to Ireland. His father was tending a fire, cooking something in a big iron kettle. When the boy landed in the middle of the yard, he popped out of the milk canister, smoking a cigarette. This was no surprise to the family assembled in the yard, only a surprise to me that there was a boy in the canister at all. His father told him, "It's good that you didn't panic. When a balloon catches on fire, it's only when you panic that you're in trouble." The father, the boy, and his brother walked over to the lake behind the house, where they began skipping stones and planning for their next flight. December 27th, 1992, commentary. Dear Peter, what a grandish dream you've been granted. Your friend put a spell on you to dream your fate, and it worked. Looking at the dream from this end, the old air balloon catching on fire means sperm equals phoenix. Flying this balloon was an 8-year-old boy sealed in an aluminum canister, italics mine. Flying and sealed were italicized, which even Freud would have termed the sperm speeding to suckling babe as fast as ever possible. His father was tending a fire, cooking something in a big iron kettle. Would probably take all Levi Strauss to get a line on, but certainly the kettle is the feminine, the mother. Born from the nourishing canister, the boy is smoking a cigarette, a spark from the father fire. The father, the boy, and his brother walked over to the lock behind the house, where they began skipping stones, planning for next flight undeterred. It is a dream of rebirth, indeed, and is one of importance, or you wouldn't have remembered it in such vivid detail. March 25th, 2005. In the grand lobby of a theater, buying tickets to a performance, seemed to be with one of my brothers. Perhaps a number of others have purchased tickets, and the performance seems to be starting. Extremely special, sacred music for the Easter season. The space inside is Stephansdom's interior. That's the main cathedral in Vienna. Theatrical, with rows of seating instead of pews. Impressions of cavernous, cathedralic space. Anxiety that the performance is beginning. Receive the receipt for my credit card purchase and begin to sign. Somehow difficult to grip the pen in my hand. Able to sign my first name, arduous. Receipt then slips away from under my signature and drifts off behind the cashier's desk, falling to the floor. It cannot be found or retrieved. Without the receipt, can't receive tickets to get into the performance. Music's introit quickens, coalesces. Its momentum builds. Is it Beethoven or is it Arvo Pärt? At a loss, after a static few minutes in quelling the mounting impatient paralysis, speak to one of the clerks, incompetent and fluent Deutsch, to negotiate a deal. Details lost. About to enter the performance, which somehow is empty. I know Stephansdom is essentially empty inside. Clerk suddenly finds partially signed receipt on floor and smilingly offers it to me. Complete it with my full signature. August 25th, 2005, commentary. Music, liturgy, ritual, performance, theater, cathedral, writing, name, sign, ardor, accident, partial ability, paralysis or arthritis, loss, hero worship, ingenuity, foreign language, familiar language, discovered fluency, and implicit worth, negotiation, late start, desire to get in, cooperation, rediscovery, full name, signature, ingress, emptied out, arrival, plenum, regress, cosmos. Recurring. A tree, typically unremarkable, hypnotical, and small, but also isolated and horticultured with Bosch symmetries, but ordinary nonetheless. Passing it, I notice within the shell of its leaves, birds, little passerines and bright plumages, exotics, unexpected even in the dream locale, cheering lucidly on the stem of branches, seeping in and out of the bough of foliage, invariably spotting them. I count them, sort them by class and number, sift them into mental collections, feeling as though I've suddenly found piles of new quarters. This inspeciated light, these flying efflorescences, a momentary cosmic taxonomy. I've never had this dream that it wasn't interrupted. What ciphers my wakefulness? This dream, its sculpted topiary enclosures, its sudden breathed out of theomantic irrationality, its spectacularly orderly migratory bird life. Recursive commentary, repressed, May 29th, 2006, July 3rd, 2006. That's because I wrote the commentary for this and then somehow didn't include it in a manuscript when I initially typed it up. I use a manual typewriter. So that's why it's recursive commentary repressed. The belief held in antiquity that dreams were sent by the gods in order to guide the actions of men was a complete theory of dreams, giving information on everything worth knowing about them. That's from Freud, The Interpretation of Dreams. 3, dreams of others. This is a dream that my wife had, and I showed this to her recently, and she didn't believe that she had the dream. And she told me, and I said, no, this is it. She said, no, that's impossible. No way. Because she hates poetry. So, she doesn't like poets either, I should say. Or Catholics. I'm the full package. The Arab hid poetry in his nostril, a contraband smuggled from his homeland into a badlands. All of poetry. It was so valuable. An illegal trafficking of it. As if uranium. As if narcotics. How did he hide poetry? In a tiny scroll, tightly wound, minutely dilated when unpinched, slackening its coils as they tensed against his septum? No scroll. The scroll I made up. When I wrote your dream down, 3 red-shafted flickers of family drill into suet feeders, suspended in an infertile pear tree. The man in this dream was a poet, a savior. He spared poetry its suppression by inserting it in his nostril, abstractly. Abstractly how? This parable illustrates a life, fabulous in its intent, not a fable, parabolic in its axiom, shapely in its form, a life in an instant. But you never saw the poet, the Arab, not in your dream, not ever. Rather, you learned of him from a painting, an abstract, a green landscape, a symbolic color field you were looking at in a gallery. The painting was entitled The Fate of Poetry. It had been painted by a young Muslim painter dressed in a galabeah who had once told you he was prohibited from looking at representations of naked women. A commentator on your congruent but perplexed and Oneiric involvement with poetry. My wife is an art historian, and she sometimes has Muslim students who tell her that they can't look at certain slides because they portray naked women. She's like, that's Western art. I mean, you're going to have to get used to it. So there's another, now this is another dream this is the dreams of others section. This is another dream, which is actually not really a dream so much as a kind of nightmare. I was once driving south of Detroit on I-75 with my dad, and we were, we could see all of the Ford plants in Dearborn, and he said, and it looked, hellish. It was probably dusk, and there was, smoke pluming from the smokestacks and fire from the refineries. And he said, this is the dream of Henry Ford. But this really happened. Furnaces of affliction, an education endured, a bodily based scene built up, the breaking up of the ore, the smelting in the furnaces, the release of the molten metals, the casting into new form. A baby experiences a scene in reference to a self, but nothing nameable as such. Highways coiling industry and wrapping a dream city. Naming emerges in the elaborations, semantic, syntactical, social, and the feel of such experiences can then be felt in the conscious moment of it. The steelworkers in their abyssal hammering, the animal heart of it, the animal lungs of the bellows they filled. Vehicles ruined the furnaces, wounding their rage into timid heat. An industry sputtered, and the core of the city cooked. River Rouge, the Ford plant, carried above the metal heat of it in terror, clutching to my mother. The grand system of perceptual categorizing she invented for me there, its massively anxious connections, its endlessly re-entering contacts she nurturingly envisioned carrying me in a tour over hell in her care. They used to let you tour the River Rouge plant, and there was this catwalk across one of the steel pits in which they were melting the metal. And I was 3 years old, and I really thought it was the end of life. It's a truly vivid memory.